cutting edge guests, awesome, uncensored, jaw-dropping information, plus funny memes, good deeds, and loads of laughter. Kind of have it all. Ladies and gentlemen, if your soul is awake, then welcome, because you're in the right place. Hey, good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls. Welcome to the Sovereign Soul Program, a show which stands for love, levity, and liberty, because after all, love is the most powerful force in the universe, and laughter's the best medicine, especially covering serious topics in all matters, ancient, current, and quantum. And I've got an incredible show for you today with two guests who have been there, done that. Two lion mamas that are spiritual, that are back here, that to me personally are multidimensional fifth, sixth, seventh density beings that are here incarnated on this planet to create and empower these amazing children in this lifetime. They are mothers, and one of them happens to be a newly minted grandmother. She's smiling right now when I say that, because they have been able to raise their children with an incredible amount of empowerment, self-worth, recognition of their own superpowers and their potential, and they've allowed them to move forward and follow the mission that they feel that they're here for in this time. So there's an incredible amount of information and lessons learned that can generate positive impacts in your life, those around you. You have children. I do encourage you to share this and bring this into conversation with them at the dinner table or in the living room, or perhaps in the car when you're driving to and from gymnastics or a ski vacation, wherever it is. And by the way, we're also sharing some incredible truths and perspectives on what's going on here today, along with a lot of laughter and love. And the purpose for all of us doing this is to foster a greater world as we fight back against the evil and continue to uplift ourselves in this golden age of humanity, in the Aquarian age where we are today. First of all, before we move forward, I want to personally thank you, the whistleblowers, the digital warriors, the citizen soldiers, the healthcare heroes, the powerful parents, the divine masculine protectors, and the divine feminine guardians. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for standing up for the sovereignty of all souls here and now. It has not been for naught. Keep it up, because we continue to win for the first and final time, in my personal belief, that we will move forward in this incredible era of humanity and experience it in crystalline bodies, no longer carbon-based bodies. And by the way, as a former infantry soldier who was trained as a peacekeeper, who also spent summers hopping out of helicopters, fighting wildfires in Ontario and the Yukon, I have had that continued calling to serve the greater good. It's in my blood. It's a core of my family. Shout out to my younger sister who's in Ottawa, who's still being of great service to the world too, because our family's lineage holds those of patriots who have stood up, fought against evil, who have actually fled the Nazi regime twice in 2 world wars, came to Canada, in my experience, and soldiered up, got on a uniform, went back and fought against that. And here we are. We're all doing our part today as truthers, as those that are speaking truth and love and light into this world. And you may be doing that yourself as an entrepreneur or whatever it is. One of the key things, as JFK said, is the service of truth is the ultimate heroism. So the other thing that MLK said is those who stand by and witness evil and do nothing are just as guilty as the perpetrators to evil themselves. So I do encourage you to subscribe to the show, stay in touch and stay in tune with us, and then share this with others to help waken them up in this amazing golden era of humanity. All right. So I'd like to turn over to introduce you to amazing guests. Returning for our second interview is Christy DeArment. Welcome, girl. Reiki Master, an incredible healer, and a newly minted grandmother. And pretty much as a solo parent, raised 2 beautiful girls. And we'll talk about Jesse and Phoenix and what they're doing and moving forward. And my Reiki 2 classmate, Judy Koons, the true health detective. Now, Judy and I go all the way back to doing our Reiki level 2 with Christy. So just an amazing transformation and evolution that we've all had together in our independent lives, as Judy runs truehealthdetective.com website. She just came in. We had to call her, like, are you coming on to the interview? Because she's out there in her beekeeper suit in a backyard and has an amazing, incredible experience too. And originally, we'll get into your background being raised in what people would consider the backwoods of northern British Columbia, and where you are now in beautiful Colorado with such an eclectic, amazing family. Ladies, welcome to the show, and thanks for agreeing to be on here today.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you as well. So what we're going to be talking about is, divine lion mamas, right? And what we have been seeing in society worldwide, in particular North America, but also worldwide, about the coddling that parents have done, and where we're seeing this as the majority on a general scale, generalization, that they're disempowering children and kids as they've grown up, and some of those in these generations. And I'd also like to touch on, incarnations and reincarnation experiences, because we're all spirits, as we know, having a physical experience. And perhaps maybe we'll touch on ETs and obviously the amazing healings and the health modalities that each of you bring to the table and serve humanity with, if that's cool with you.
Sounds great.
Cool.
Yep, I'm willing.
Cool.
Let's see where we go.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. Judy, your first time on the show. Why don't you share with us a little bit about your background, if you don't mind, and as well as the unique family dynamic where you, David, got together and raised these amazing kids and what they're doing right now.
Well, my background is just that. I was raised in northern British Columbia, Canada, where it was cold in the wintertime. And we did a lot of resting in the wintertime because there wasn't a lot of light. But I grew up gardening and being close to nature and working with animals. And I learned so much about myself. And essentially, I took what I learned and I've now applied it to parenting. And I heard you say, disempowered children where there's a lot of coddling. I can't tell you how often I have kiddos in my home that are friends of my children that they don't know how to do much of anything for themselves. It's like a muscle when you're parenting, allowing your children to experience a little bit of the discomfort that comes from building a muscle. And one of the main principles that we've used as parents is emotional fitness comes first. With emotional fitness, there's not a thing that you aren't able to address, whether it's something you want to learn or whether it's something you need to deal with or whatever. And emotional fitness is no different than physical fitness. You go to the gym and you work out. There's effort involved. Sometimes you don't feel like it. Sometimes you don't want to, but you work out and you build those muscles by asking more of them a little bit at a time. And it's not like you go to the gym and you blow it all out. You set those parameters for yourself and you do your best to live by them and correct and continue as you go. But that whole piece, and a lot of it I learned from, training horses professionally. A lot of it I learned from watching animals in nature. Some animals can be really tough. We don't want to be that tough maybe on our kiddos, but asking more of them so that they can survive and manage and navigate what we're having to deal with, especially nowadays. It's always been something, it's always different for kiddos, right? Always going to be different because of different times and different things that we're exposed to and different things that we're having to deal with. But essentially, raising a child that's emotionally fit has the ability to deal with whatever comes their way. I love that I get to be here today. My focus is in health, and I really strongly believe that kiddos that don't have to deal with a lot of physical noise from illness have a much easier go of navigating all the other noise that they're exposed to on an ongoing basis in our world. So it's just a matter of finding those principles that really fit us as a family and for them because we're all about talking to our kids and helping them recognize, that they need to be contributing individuals to this family unit so that they can contribute to the world as a community, or as a, even like a state community, whatever it is that they're contributing to. So it's not just about us dictating. It's about us having this really respectful conversation that we can then live up to the degree that we can, always correcting and continuing as we go. But we need to build those muscles. Those are muscles too. Just like we have physical, just like we have mental, just like we have emotional, just like we have spiritual muscles. Build them up. Let's make us strong, adaptive, really powerful and empowered.
Gorgeous. What a gorgeous message. Thank you for sharing. And Christy, my dear, for those who are new and haven't listened to our previous interview, would you please reintroduce yourself to the world? And then, obviously, share with us a little bit about raising your children as pretty much a single mother.
Yep. I'm Christy DeArment, and I have the Reiki Muse website. And I grew up in Michigan, and I was blessed to have a wonderful mother and father. But speaking of mothering, I think of my great grandmas, one of them who I knew really well to my teens, and my other grandmas I knew into my one grandma lived to be, I think I was 37 when she passed. And my other grandma, my dad's mom, she was wonderful. I loved my grandparents, and one of my goals in life is to be a great grandmother. And I'm on my way, because now I'm a grandma, and that makes me so happy. And mothering to me is one of the most important things I've ever done in life. And I think it makes a huge impact on the world, even though in the moment, sometimes being a mother seems undervalued and doesn't seem like you're always making a big difference in the world. But the impact goes beyond your imagination. It goes beyond. So to all the mothers out there, you're doing an amazing job. No matter how you think you're doing right now, you're doing a good job. So that's really important. And it ties in, everything Judy was saying. It all ties in, like raising healthy children to follow their own inner knowing, their own inner guidance, also has a big impact on the world. Because when their issues in life come up, they get more and more confident on how to handle them. Like from my older daughter, when she was little and she wanted to get a balloon off the ceiling, and I come in the room and she's standing on a chair and standing on the chair's on a table or whatever. She's got a broom and she's getting this, she's getting a balloon off the ceiling. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And that's a creative solution. And I'm glad you didn't get hurt. So, mothering, I feel very passionate about, as well as Reiki. Those are the two most, my two callings, I think, if I had to name two of them. So, and I did do it on my own, but I also, I was married for 10 years and I had help, and my older daughter's father, he's been, in the backgrounds, but on the day-to-day front of life, I did a lot of it.
Yeah.
And you're never alone. I met Judy when Jesse and Nicole were 4, and you have a tribe, hopefully. If you don't have a tribe, nurture one and find one, because it makes all the difference in the world when you have support.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And that actually is one of the things that dovetails into a point I'd like to make, and get all of your feedback on. The very first, if not second, but it was one of the very first interactions that I had with Judy, David, and the kids. We were invited over for dinner and walked into the kitchen, and Natalie was 3 years old. She's standing on a chair, and I'm like, wow, who's making dinner? Oh, Natalie, 3 years old. And she's stirring a boiling pot of spaghetti, and she's got other stuff on the stove, I believe spaghetti sauce. And she also had a cutting board, and she was cutting vegetables at 3. And she was fully involved and confident in everything she was doing. Truly remarkable and amazing. And to walk in and have an experience like that and go, this is such an amazing household. And there are many, many others from both of your families and your homes, in my experience, to bring forward to relate to that. And I think that really is a testament as well to the empowerment of the child, and then also setting, I would anticipate, rules and boundaries without putting words in your mouth. Invite your feedback as to why it was important. Judy, we'll start there if you don't mind, because Natalie is your daughter, who we're talking about now. Why is it important for you all to allow your children to get that to that level, that place, and to gift them that responsibility? I use the word gift them that responsibility to creating a meal for the family. And then when I got to witness it, she was doing so in joy. It wasn't like, this is a punishment and I've got these people coming over and I'm creating it. And by the way, folks, the meal that she was creating and putting together for us, and Lance is running around helping, and she was shepherding at the kitchen, and just an amazing interaction with her slightly older brother, Lance. That was yourself, David, Eric, Nicole, myself, and my wife at the time, or soon to be wife at that time in our lives. So they were making a meal for 8 people at 3. So if you don't mind, share with us your feedback and perspectives and guidance on that. And then we'll go to Christy, because you have same stories.
If you notice, when it comes to children, they want to do things. Right from the very beginning, they're looking to replicate or copy the elders in their lives. And if we're not saying, oh, you're too little, if we're not saying, oh, imposing what we believe about what we're doing on them, they can find enjoyment in that. And in our household, you're allowed to do any of it. The power tools are not off limit. You have to be able to hold them properly, and you have to be able to certify with it, with the oven, with the stove, with the knives, with whatever it is. They want to. So yes, we have parameters. We have what we would call boundaries, even though those are more about guidance, because again, they may have a different idea about what they're capable of than even we do. And I want to listen to them, because they are coming in with different information. They have a different experience than what maybe I had growing up in an extremely, I grew up in a alcoholic home. I grew up in a home where manic depressive was the thing. So I grew up doing a lot of it myself because of having to, not because of wanting to necessarily. And I wanted to set it up in a way that the kids could identify and express what they wanted to do. So Natalie being able to do that at a young age, and all of them did. She's the youngest. Yeah. And they all did. They chose what they wanted to do. They weren't dictated to by gender roles. And believe me, they've wanted to do crazy things. Like my oldest daughter, it was the same thing. She watched Food Network. She was homeschooled. I homeschooled all the kids. And well, I didn't, they did. Let's get that really straight. I'm not taking credit for their learning. They already knew how to learn, and they knew how to follow their interests. So I let them do that. But there was one time when my oldest daughter, she was making a smoothie, and David and I were looking at one another like, oh, heaven's sakes, look at all those things she's putting in there. But she'd been watching Food Network for like a year. Yeah. And that was when we came up with the rule. As we were watching that, we came up with the rule. You make it, you have to eat it. Yeah. So make sure you're not making too much, right? And she comes at us with this smoothie, and we're both going, okay, well, yes, absolutely. We're going to try this. And we tried it, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. That's incredible. Used things that we wouldn't have normally used, but she had done the learning. She had put it together. She brought her creativity to it. And so we created parameters around, okay, you can do whatever you want in the kitchen once you're certified, but you have to be willing to eat it. So let's think about quantity and think about, what it is you're doing. Because the boys did something completely different. They didn't watch Food Network. Yeah. And they put dirt and grass and all sorts of things in the Vitamix to create smoothies. And I was like, oh heavens, I'm not even gonna, but I did. I tasted it. It was horrible. And they had to figure it out, but it wasn't a full, Vitamix full.
Right.
But I was thankful that Nicole had watched Food Network, because then we got a few tastes that were pretty amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Natalie did something similar, and she wanted to do that. So we set it up for her. It's like, okay, how do you be safe around a hot stove?
Yeah.
But absolutely, once you've shown us that you can handle it, let's do this. And let's keep the cold water over here and a bit of lavender essential oil just in case there's a burn. Because guess how they learn? They're going to burn themselves. They're going to bruise themselves. They're going to cut themselves, and we're going to help them sort it out. We're going to help them learn how to deal with those things. Build that muscle.
Great. Well, that's a beautiful story. Christy, you have many similar stories to that. Do you have any different perspectives, or what is something that actually stands out? Because I would imagine that this following in terms of, did you ever walk in to the living room one day or the kitchen, you see Jesse or Phoenix doing something that you're like, where did they learn that? And then all of a sudden did a creation like that? Or was there a similar experience outside of that? And this is kind of like a way that the parent goes, wow, where did my kid get that from? Was there any experience like
that? Well, Phoenix came in fully capable of using her body. Like amazing, like, standing on stools when she was a year and a half old, like fully balanced. And what sticks out with Jessie was she would talk to the nature spirits. And I'd say, where did you, like, she would be gathering whatever, leaves or stuff out in nature. And I'd say, how did you learn this? And she would be like, I think she called the spirit Rain. Rain told me. I'm like, who's Rain? And the way she described Rain sounded just like Mother Nature or a nature spirit. And I'm like, okay. So she came in already naturally talking to nature and would, put concoctions together, and it was pretty cool. And what I was thinking about when Judy was talking is how we were mothers together, but we did things differently. She had a larger household than I did, and it was just, me and the girls. So as far as like rules and stuff, I was more, in the flow, flexible, like finding our way and things that work for us, and rather than having a set way of doing things, except for, safety stuff. So it's interesting, like, like things from like bedtimes, sometimes some families have set bedtimes and, set rising times. Yeah. We're always like pretty flowy. But then when you have more than one child, like with me and Jessie, we could do whatever we wanted when we were kids, or when she was a baby. Mm-hmm. I guess I was not a kid then, but I could go, I could go to concerts and parties and do whatever I wanted with her. And she was fine. Didn't matter what time it was. We'd go to bed at midnight and she would just sleep in later, which was really cool. But when I had Phoenix, she was like, no, we need a routine. So it's 8:30 at night. And if I wasn't paying attention to the time, she would start crying. So when Phoenix came along, we got more like, okay, there is kind of a bedtime. Yeah. We need this. So, and because she would wake up in the morning. So your kids and working between them and the dynamics between everybody, you figure out your own flow of what works for you as a family based on everybody's input. And it might be different for everybody. So then you come to agreements to work things out with each other. So those were the things that came up in my mind when Judy was speaking, because I always was like, wow, I always totally looked up to Judy, like, wow, how she's got all these ways of doing things. And I'm like, I just can't do that. And even Jessie said to me one time, she's like, Mom, I like when you mother the way you mother, not the way Judy mothers. And it's like, oh, okay, well, because that's another part of my parenting. I want my kids to be themselves. And I remember when Jessie would come home from kindergarten and she would act like 30 different people. I was like, we got to clear out your energy. You're not being you. You got to be you, not anybody else. So, and meeting Judy is why meeting Nicole when she was 4 is why eventually I got Jessie to homeschool. Yeah. She finally agreed to homeschool, not agreed. She came to it on her own that I wanted to homeschool, because when I met Nicole, she was so centered in her own light. And I would see Jessie coming home every day from school scattered, not the Jessie that she'd been presenting herself before she was in school. So it's really cool to see your kids evolve like that.
Well, and thank you for bringing that up as well and sharing those experiences, ladies. That is a wonderful segue into the spirituality that children in particular are expressing in an unadulterated, unsuppressed form. The younger that they are, it seems that the more open and aware they are of the environment, whether it is, like we had mentioned in your introduction, Christy, Jessie in that case, seeing auras, speaking to forced spirits, and other items. So I would like to go there and then also bring it into the fact that... Hey everybody, it's Brad here. Our show will continue in a moment real quick. If it resonates with you, drop a like, follow us, and subscribe to the show. Hear from cutting edge guests who are experts in their field, have a lot of laughs, and discover some powerful tips on how you can thrive through 2025 in this amazing golden era of humanity. So give us a like, drop a comment, follow us right now as we fight back on the war being waged on humanity right now. And by the way, if you feel so inclined, please do share this with 9 friends, family, and colleagues as well. I'm deeply honored you're listening to this. Thank you for doing so right now. For those many of you who have taken that step. And here we go, back to our show. Perhaps before going there, had not yet shared in Judy's introduction that you're an integrated family. You and David had a child each from a previous relationship. So those are 2 children that are brought in. And then you and David had 2 children, Lance and then Natalie, to round off that 4. So we have a really amazing cross-section here of parents that have put forward and experienced what it's like to, for the most part, Christy, being a single mother. You had a little help, a little bit of time, but I would still equate it primarily as a single mother in the upbringing, in my experience, my opinion. And then Judy, for yourself and David coming together in this mixed family. And then we'll get into where the kids are today and what they're doing, just as a wonderful arc of our story throughout the interview, and the spiritual aspect, the incarnations, and touching on those stories. So I wanted to give that credit where credit is due on an integrated family relationship and how that works out, and that there are different parenting styles and skills that each of you represent and bring forward here that people can learn from and draw from.
I can't tell you how challenging it is to be a co-parent sometimes. And yet there's so much dynamic fuel, I guess, to work with. There's so much that we all bring to the family dynamic that allows us to all learn so much more because of it. So it would be like going to the gym, and instead of just having 4 or 5 pieces of equipment, we have this whole room full of equipment to work with in order to build our emotional fitness. And each of the kids brings in something different. Nicole would be gone for a while over the summer, and Eric had a different parenting schedule that we lived by for that. So we had a whole room full of equipment to build everybody's emotional fitness, not just the kids, ours as well. So it was very powerful to be able to recognize that we were doing that. and then interplay with that as much as possible. So the kids all have different relationships. They're not going to get to the point where they're adults and not have the ability to deal with how do we do it when our friends aren't with us all the time, because they learned that within the family structure. There was so many things I could list, many lists of things that we benefited from in having this dynamic. But each of us brings something different. And David being a Marine, some of our life was a little more regimented than even I would have worked with. Mm-hmm. But I brought the creative flow to that. And so we found some really incredible balance. And each of the kids fit into that a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And they're all very sensitive. Like they've all been attuned to Reiki through Christy. So Christy's attuned all of the kids to Reiki, and some of them many levels, and depends on what they wanted to do. But they're all very sensitive one way or another. And Nicole came in, she didn't sleep very well to begin with because she was always seeing spirits. Mm-hmm. So she was always seeing that energy, even before we've shifted over now into this new kind of awareness around multidimensional and death space and spirits and all of that. Mm-hmm. She still does. She has ancestors show up all the time. She agreed to clear a ton of old energy for ancestors. And so they show up and talk to her all the time. So she keeps herself quite busy sometimes, so she's not seeing that all the time. But, I think of Lance too. One time we were at this fun fair thing, and he was sitting on my lap. David just purchased like a quick little mini read for me, and he was sitting on my lap, and he's like, I can't read you with him sitting on your lap because his light is so bright that I can't see anything. Wow. And so David took Lance, and I got the mini read, and we, the guy was so interested in what was going on with Lance that I think we talked for another 20 minutes after that. He's like, where did this kid come from? Yeah. Right? His light is so bright that he just attracts people. Mm-hmm. And he affects the environments that he's in just by being there. And you commented about, adjusting or affecting the world, these kiddos. We always told Lance, live your light, whatever that looks like. Yeah. We're not really concerned about what he does on the outside, because just being there, he affects whatever environment he's in. So it was all about recognizing and helping the kids recognize that their vibration, their frequency made a huge difference in whatever they chose to do in this outside world, and giving them permission. Homeschooled, you can do it however you want. Yeah. We're not concerned about following a pathway. We work with some basics so that they can actually function. But the rest of that, it's like, what's your frequency about? Where are you mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually? What kind of health are you working with? And being able to do that. And Eric and Natalie, they're right in there as well. Like Natalie is always talking to animals. She's so clear. She doesn't need to do much other than that in order to affect the world, because she's bringing in this piece where, we have the birds, but they don't live in the cage. We have the rabbits, and they are outside more than not. So it's all about her expanding into that and understanding and connecting with those creatures in a way that she recognizes herself as nature as well. Mm-hmm. And Eric, he's all about Reiki. He's so spiritually connected on an ongoing basis that he comes in the room and you can just see the world light up. Yeah. Because he's got that much energy and he's so lifey. So we've got the whole range, Nicole with her creativity and being able to connect with other dimensions, visually and consciously. And that just continues. And it's been from the very beginning, it's like, okay, what's going on? It's not just, okay, they don't want to go to bed. There's something more to that, and asking enough questions to get the information that allows you to work with them in such a powerful way. But Christy has taught me that too, parenting alongside Christy, all these kids as a tribe or a community. I ask more questions because of having Christy in my life right from the beginning. It was so cool the way we met even. We'd met on a spiritual level, and we called Christy, I think, called us all, a group of us, to Colorado. And then her and I both were going to birth lodges because we both used midwives when we had our children. And we went to 2 each, or did you go to 1? Or we went to one. All I know is the last birth lodge I ever went is the one that I met her. Yeah. So we were spiritually bringing one another together right from the beginning. And I had no desire to go to birth lodges. This was a gathering that our midwives put together to connect moms and new moms and pregnant women and that. And it was like, no, I have enough children. I have enough to do. I don't really want to go. Okay, I'll go. And there's Christy.
Yeah.
Waiting. So it's just, we can tap into so much more than just on the physical level. And I think that teaching our children that they are mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual beings, and physical is not more important than the spiritual. It's not more important than the mental and the emotional. They get to be these whole powerful beings and supercharged and empowered and standing at the stove, cooking dinner at whatever age they're ready to do that at. Okay. From the practical to what we consider to be fantastical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Christy, to you.
That was beautiful.
Brought us all together, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was just popping into mind, because now that I have the perspective of grandmother too, that so much of what you do along the way is just being you and your example of your life. Like Jessie didn't used to cook a whole lot, right? And I'd be like, Judy's got her family cooking. And I'm like, But now I watch Jessie cooking her family the most beautiful meals, and she cooks for me, and it's so good and wonderful. And it all comes at the perfect time, just the perfect time. And another thing that came to mind is how our children cause us to expand as people while we're raising them. Like they each draw different things from you. And as a lot of my time as a single mom, I'm naturally a nurturing person, so that came easy, but I had to learn to step up and be a strong leader at times, and like, because I'm all about letting them follow their direction. But there's times in life where we need to go this way for this period of time, and this is what's happening, and step up what I would perceive as more like the masculine role. And, like, okay, we're moving to Boulder in 2 months. Okay, boom. Or yes, you are going to go try out this uncomfortable experience for you. You're going to try this. We did this homeschooling school, like once a week gathering. And I remember Phoenix did not want to go. And I'm like, you're going to try it out. And she was throwing an all day tantrum, and I'm channeling Annie Sullivan, like, I can do this. And there's not many times that looking back, I felt like we can do this. We can try it. I know it's uncomfortable. I never tried to overpower my children's will, but I also, sometimes need to push a little bit, like, let's just try this. And then with Phoenix, I've learned that, generally I got her to try it. It was probably a good thing, but she was right. It wasn't in alignment with her. But I got to flex my muscles too, and grow as who I am as a parent and a person. Yeah. So that's, I like that about our children. They show us more of who we can be as well. And we're all unlimited beings of light, right?
Mhm.
And we're just clearing the patterns out of the way so we can show up more of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that.
It's
Yep.
beautiful, and thank you. There's a couple of points I'd like to make that both of you have brought up, and then also a little bit so that the audience understands what you're gathering from this is there are unique expressions, because we're all unique. There may be similarities, but everybody has a unique expression, unique behaviors and traits. You heard Judy, for example, say David's a Marine. David, not just a Marine, he is former Special Forces Marine Force Recon. All right. So if anybody doesn't know what Marine Force Recon is, there's Special Forces, Special Operations, 18 branches, in the United States military, the Canadian as well. And so everybody's familiar with the US Navy, Navy SEALs. The Marines have Force Recon, and the Marines were first any branch in the US military. If he was on, he wanted me to make sure that I say that. So that's his upbringing, and he served in combat operations in Somalia. So this is that co-parent mentality, not just where David brought Eric to the relationship whom he'd had with the previous spouse, and Judy, you had brought Nicole the relationship with the prior spouse, but you also have somebody who'd spent over 20 years in that very military regimented structure, who, when he retired, was a captain in Marine Force Recon and logistics, especially. So very, very left brain and whatnot. And you grew up in northern British Columbia. You shared a little bit about your heritage. I just want to point this out. One of the very first conversations Judy and I had about where she was growing up in northern BC, she's like, yeah, we'd go out, we'd hunt elk. And, by the age of 8, I think you mentioned, you knew how to skin an elk, right? So we're talking about a very industrious upbringing. And then you shared a little bit more about that and painting a picture for Christy and her upbringing in Michigan, and then paying her way to go to law school in Chicago, become an attorney, and do improv. Do I do improv or attorney? And then pivot and focus on light work. Hey everybody, it's Brad here. Our show will continue in a moment real quick. If it resonates with you, drop a like, follow us, and subscribe to the show. Hear from cutting edge guests who are experts in their field, have a lot of laughs, and discover some powerful tips on how you can thrive through 2025 in this amazing golden era of humanity. So give us a like, drop a comment, follow us right now as we fight back on the war being waged on humanity right now. And by the way, if you feel so inclined, please do share this with 9 friends, family, and colleagues as well. I'm deeply honored you're listening to this. Thank you for doing so right now, for those many of you who have taken that step. And here we go, back to our show. And being this amazing healing master for so many thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of souls that she has touched directly or indirectly through those relationships, is quite compelling. And what you're hearing, folks, and receiving is that these unique backgrounds, expressions, it can all work. So if you're a parent with a spouse, or you're doing a co-parenting and you're worried about how is my child going to grow up, am I doing things right or not, you've got this very dynamic melting pot of experiences that are being shared here with you as we move forward. There's 2 other really cool points that I'd like to touch on as well moving forward. Number 1, natural birth. You brought it up, and I had that on a note here on the screen prior to, and then I'll jump in with questions on that. Number 2, homeschooling. All right. For me, I had not been in this lifetime exposed to natural birth process. And it was Judy, because I'd first met David, then yourself, and then through you met Christy. And so I learned that you had a natural birth with Lance and Nicole. I'm like, what is a natural birth? And then what is a midwife? Right. And then we've got that through to Christy. And Christy, Jesse had a natural birth right there in your home to deliver Romeo, who is he 8 months old right now? Forgive me on his age.
He's 16 months, and she actually gave birth at a birth center, but
it was a birth centers.
Yeah.
My apologies. I thought there was a circle in the living room. Maybe that was prior to.
That was probably talked about. It was one of the options.
Gotcha. My bad. So if we could talk about what natural birth is to educate the audience, why you chose that for yourselves, which also expands on the health of children and the star seeds that continue to come to this planet and attempt to make their entrance and be birthed into this new age. Then let's talk about homeschooling and the systemization, and what benefits you've seen from those that have went through homeschooling. And you'd mentioned, Christy, that Phoenix gave it a shot and went, no, not for me, which is awesome. So natural birth, homeschooling, just a few things over the next few minutes. Small talk.
Well, natural birth is a recognition that you're not sick. Hospitals are for sick individuals. I wasn't sick being pregnant. I had no complications. Nicole would have been born at home, but I was living in Northern Canada, and midwives and doulas and all of that, they weren't there yet. But my doctor was out of town and no one else was willing to work with me. So we went to the hospital and we were there for a few hours and then we went home. But it's just normal to have children, and you being connected to your body and being able to recognize that a child can be born into an environment that is, the fire lit, the music you choose, the smells you want, the lighting you want, not this harsh lighting with everybody buzzing around and intervening. A baby doesn't really need intervention unless they do. A lot of women are less healthy than they used to be. And babies didn't survive always without hospitals, but setting it up so that you have that as a backup, but recognizing that it's just a normal, natural process. And I grew up on a farm, so it wasn't like I wasn't familiar with how that works. Yeah. You get to be you get to witness all of it from the beginning to the end. So it's a matter of just recognizing that and allowing yourself to feel confident enough in your body. Mm-hmm. And so for me, birthing was just a natural extension of, nature. Yeah. Babies coming into the world. And having babies at home. Oh, it's so beautiful when the midwife, she wasn't even part of Natalie's birth. And Natalie was birthed by me and David.
Mm-hmm. In the living room.
It was just a beautiful experience. And to go from having the baby to just going to bed, your bed where you're comfortable, and the baby is resting and you're resting, and the midwife has cleaned everything up and delivered some nice fruits and vegetables to you, right? So how beautiful is that? There's so little anxiety or so little stress, and yet you still have somebody there that can help you to deal with any issues that might come up. Health is important in order to be able to do that. But mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, physical health, it's all of those things. And as far as homeschooling, there's absolutely no way I was gonna, and I let the kids choose that as well as they got older. They've all participated to some degree in public school to the way that they wanted to. Nicole wanted to do college courses and high school courses at the same time. So she enrolled in a high school that did concurrent enrollment and did a whole bunch of college courses while she was still, 14, 15 years old. But it was very eclectic. It was like, what do the kids want to learn? And how can we use that to make learning fun? Yeah. Because it doesn't have to be grunt work. It doesn't have to be so painful where they're set at this schedule. And they have, the kids, they would do their academic courses in 3 hours instead of 8 hours. And then they would go to the parkour gym for 25 hours a week. Or they would go to the skate park, or they would play with their other homeschooled friends, or they would hang with Christy's kiddos when they were homeschooling or doing other things. And so they were able to do it because they weren't matching other kids' timelines or other kids' time that it took for them to do their academics. And so they didn't have to live in that kind of scheduled space. They ate when they were doing their schooling if they wanted to. They moved around freely based on what was being asked of them personally. So homeschooling to me was just, I didn't like school personally, because I felt like it was a lot of information that I wasn't interested in.
Right.
And I tell you, my kids have proved it. If they're interested in something, they learn it in this much time instead of this much time.
Right.
So to me, it's like, well, let's follow your interests. And my oldest son is a great example. You know, he didn't like school. It was painful. Everybody was always challenged about it. And then he chose something that he wanted to go do, and he does top marks every single class that he's in, every single test that he does. So it's what he's interested in. Why wouldn't you want to learn what you're interested in right from the beginning? And, you know, the kids all learned to read at different times because that was their personality. But I remember both Nicole and Natalie wanted to read really early on, but we did some health stuff with her first for her eyes, so they tracked properly. Because most kids learning to read, they learn to read so early that their eyes haven't learned to track, so they always come up with these coping mechanisms to read. But once they all learn to read, you know, they have no difficulty reading 700-page novels in days. You know, so it's like what serves them best instead of the mean has always been most powerful to me when it comes to schooling, period. Mm-hmm. It's proven itself. You know, it doesn't matter what the kids want to take on, they take it on. They don't even think twice about it. It could be high entry college, university, it could be trade, whatever it is for them, they're willing.
Yeah, sounds like a natural discovery process of allowing and empowerment as well.
I think so. Even though some of the things they've been interested in have been a little interesting.
Mm-hmm. Judy, how did you come across natural birth, home birthing, and what was your draw to it from a health standpoint? Oh, sorry, Judy, Christy.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. It's like,
you're like twin sisters and soul sisters to me. Excuse me.
Yeah. So natural birth, my sister was pregnant with my niece probably like, I don't know, 3-4 years before I became pregnant. And she was going to do a home birth in her bathtub. And I was there for that, but she ended up needing to have a cesarean, and I was still there for that. And I was like, when I became pregnant, I read the book Spiritual Midwifery. And that was very, very empowering. And you learn how birth is a natural occurrence, and our bodies are designed to give birth. And also my mom gave birth to all three of us, my brother and sister, naturally in the hospital with hypnosis. So like there was no drugs. And I just think that giving birth naturally is empowering, and it sets it up for yourself, and for your family line to keep doing that. And you're opening up this energetic doorway when you give birth that it's amazing. Giving birth to me was one of my favorite things I've ever done in life. And I got to do it twice. And the first time I did it in a hospital naturally, only because I had really good health insurance and it cost me $15. So I just did it naturally in a hospital. Leave me alone. I don't want anything. And then the second birth with Phoenix was at home in my bathtub with my sister in the bathtub with me. And then 2 midwives, and Jessie was there. She got to see what sex Phoenix was when she was born, and Matt, and like, I think there was, including me and Phoenix, there was 9 people in that bathroom when she was born.
Wow.
Yeah. And we're both pretty introverted. So that's kind of amazing that we had such a room full of people when she was born. But yeah, so the cool thing about it is now I got to be there for my grandson's birth and in the room with him. And both of my birth experiences were really, beautiful. And the hard labor part was really relatively short. And I get to see Jessie do the same thing, where she just like, oh, my water broke. And then a few hours later, Romeo's here. And so I'm curious, I would venture to guess that when she has her next baby, she probably will lean more towards home birth because she's got even more confidence to go through that, what seems like the great unknown, the first time a mother gives birth.
Yeah.
Once you do it once, you're like, wow, my body really does know what to do. So I really respect all the women who go for that the first time, because you go through this, like, it feels like the great unknown, but then when you are actually in it, you can feel the connection with all the women in the world, your family line, all the mothers before you who gave birth. And there's such great power in that. It's immense. It's beautiful. So that's, and that Reiki, birthing, natural birthing, and motherhood. Okay, now I've got 3 top things that I love. I forgot about the birthing part. I just lump it into mothering, but that's where you start, really, I guess.
What about conscious transition, Christy? That's a call.
Oh yeah, okay. I love that too. When you want to leave your body, let's do that naturally and powerfully too. Oh my God, I'm really good at that. And that's another new passion I'm discovering. Okay, so there's just, life's too short to limit your passions.
Yeah, exactly.
They just come up when you need them.
Move your body, go for a flight through the universe.
Yep.
Remote view somewhere.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Christy brought up a great point. Natural birth can happen in or out of the hospital.
Yep.
And it's changed so much because the birthing centers, those are fantastic because they have them set up so nicely now, and it's not about being sick. So it can be done either way based on what your comfort level is and what your personal instructions are encouraging.
Those are wonderful points to make, because in the society that we were raised in, and still, which is ongoing for the next little period of time, the conditioning is that being a expectant mother and about to have a baby is a horrific experience, and that you need to be in a hospital. You need to be surrounded by these white fluorescent lights that cut off your aura, right, and penetrate you in very evil ways. We all know, if anybody studied auras in etheric science. And in addition to that, that you need to have these certain pharmaceutical toxins in your body that numb you from that experience. And then the baby, that new soul, enters the world for its incarnation here, whether it's the first time on this planet or it's the 25,000th time on this planet, in a traumatic experience, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to have that choice. And not only are the two of you, success stories that it was beautiful when I had it once and then twice, and now you have children experiencing it that made that choice with Jessie, and it was another beautiful natural experience. And I'm aware of many other people in my lives that have chosen the natural birth and they enjoyed it. I mean, to listen to you saying, like, you and David had the fire going on, you had music in the background, and Natalie, you just pulled her out of it. They're like, hi, how are you, sweetheart? Like, that's amazing. And for ancient times, women have been giving birth. Females in the wild have been giving birth, whether it's fish, other mammals, animals, birds. And you don't see birds getting rushed off to a bird hospital in order to have eggs or chickens and whatnot. So why should we do it with humans? And that also brings up a great example to me from a health standpoint. Dr. Christy DeArment Northrop, she's a medical doctor, OBGYN of over 30 years, has really now railed against that allopathic constructed system about childbirth and the trauma that it creates both on the mother, the family, and the child as it's born. And they have to kind of eventually come off that trauma, heal it, in order to move forward, right? In order to allow their light to shine. And I'll put a link up here to Dr. Christy DeArment Northrop. People can check her out. She's one of the most outspoken. And she's also working with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Children's Health Defense Network.org. One of the studies that I had read about natural birth before, because it's relevant to children's health and the health of the family unit, and my perspective, ladies, is that those who choose C-sections versus even just in the hospital having a child through the birth canal, it actually robs that child of the amniotic and embryonic fluid that washes over the body, that is ingested, or comes through the skin of that baby as it's born. And it gives them nutrients as well as enzymes and a whole bunch of other wonderful things that they never would have received if they were born through C-section. Have you heard anything to that before as well?
Well, a baby that's born through the birth canal is going to be exposed to all sorts of things, and especially their biome is going to be affected through that birth canal, whereas a cesarean is much more sanitized, like what you're talking about, and they won't be exposed to some of the pieces, some of the puzzle pieces that are going to be beneficial for them. And that's not to say anything about women that go with C-sections, because some women are not healthy enough. They don't have enough release. Having been a rolfer for 30 some years, I recognize that the skeletal structure, the integrity is not there, or there's not able to be enough release for birthing through the birth canal. But that is how the baby is meant to be born. And there's a lot that they're exposed to through that is going to benefit them as a whole. Having the whole picture is how we holistically live in a natural way.
Right.
So not having that biome right from the beginning causes the body to be imbalanced. And that's why we have so many children that are already not even into their teens yet, and they're dealing with chronic illness. They just haven't been exposed. Our life is so sanitized. And Christy and I both can attest to this. We have really healthy children. And I tell you, one of the things we didn't do was make them wear clothes and wash their hands all the time. Like these kids, they'd get rid of the clothes anytime they could. We have pictures of them in the lake with nothing. Okay, a bathing suit's not going to prevent them from being exposed to the natural bacteria that benefit us, but they were so much about nature. They're nature's children.
Right.
We get to guide them, we get to help them, but they're nature's children. And the more that they're exposed to that and taught, okay, we don't necessarily go play with frogs and then stick our hands in our mouths or whatever, but the bacteria that's presented, it's not going to hurt us.
Yeah.
It actually helps us to have that balance, that natural balance within our bodies, and not be so sanitized. So we have, and it's why I have a passion for health, holistic health. But I really do start everybody with coming back to nature with food, so that they do reconnect with what their bodies are asking for. So they bring the noise down so they can hear what it is that they need in order to use food as drug instead of other things that cause direct effects. Like, I'm serious. I don't really want to get rid of this symptom if it's going to mean that I'm going to be permanently neurologically damaged. I'm not interested in that. I'd rather live with the symptom. But that's because I'm not asking myself or my kids to eliminate discomfort. I'm asking them to grow from that. I'm asking them to learn to sit in that and recognize what it is that, okay, what is your body asking for? What is it your emotions are asking? What is it that you're asking, your personal instructions are asking for, instead of just eliminating and suppressing? That's like saying, no, I don't want to talk to you. Yes, I love you, but I don't ever want to talk to you. Yes, I want to be in relationship with you, but no, I'm not going to communicate with you. It's like, it's not going to work if you do that. So allowing them to have that communication and that understanding that that's what that discomfort is. It's just information. So then they keep that feedback loop open, and they have the ability to get all the information that they need for themselves, whether it's for their health, whether it's for their passion, whether it's for their relationships, whether it's for, whatever it is in the world, expressing themselves, their light into the world. And that feedback loop open for them, which is what I think Christy and I both have really worked to do in different ways, because we have different children that are asking for different things, is the way that we've allowed them to really stand on their own and listen to themselves. And yes, take information from outside to see if it fits and throw out what doesn't. And, allow that to help them develop into who they are as human, natural beings.
Yeah.
Not away from nature, but working with nature in whatever way that they're working.
The symbiotic relationship.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Mm-hmm. I've a photo up here I'd like to share with you both, and start with Christy and get your feedback on that as we talk about the health of children. Very apropos here. This is from American Frontline Nurses that posted this. Christy, what's your take?
I think that's completely true. Yep. I did not use them on my children, and I wish I could go back and see what the ingredients are on the vitamin K shot I allowed Jessie to get when she was born, because I thought it was just a vitamin, but looking back, there might have been some other ingredients I wouldn't have accepted to give her or allowed to give her. So, yep. Mm-hmm.
And for those that are listening to this, and whether it's Spotify, Pandora, Podchaser, or whatnot, and are unable to see the video, the photo on the screen from American Frontline Nurses, it reads that if I spoon-fed my child vaccine ingredients, I'd be in prison. And then they have a vaccine ingredient list to the cdc.gov/vaccines/pubs/pinkbook/downloads/appendices/b excipient-table-2.pdf. Reading that out here, this will also be posted in the program on that. Fathers, by the way, are extremely important too. And we've heard from Christy's background that for the most part, she's a single mother raising 2 girls and had to step into that masculinity as well. There's a photo that I think was wonderful, very Americanized, but at the same time, it really speaks to the message as far as I'm concerned. Hey everybody, it's Brad here. Our show will continue in a moment real quick. If it resonates with you, drop a like, follow us, and subscribe to the show. Hear from cutting edge guests who are experts in their field, have a lot of laughs, and discover some powerful tips on how you can thrive through 2025 in this amazing golden era of humanity. So give us a like, drop a comment, follow us right now as we fight back on the war being waged on humanity right now. And by the way, if you feel so inclined, please do share this with 9 friends, family, and colleagues as well. I'm deeply honored you're listening to this. Thank you for doing so right now. For those many of you who have taken that step. And here we go, back to our show. As far as I'm concerned, Christy, I'd like your take on this by having David, still your current partner and former USMC Special Forces, your take on this particular billboard and photo.
You mean Judy?
I said Judy. See, you girls, you're like, there's going back.
We're energetic spiritual sisters.
Yeah.
I think it's really important, and David sees it that way as well. He recognizes that it's not just how our boys and girls live in this household. It's what they're going to take out into the world and how they're going to interact with the individuals that they're going to come across. Mm-hmm. And it's been really interesting because David, again, you said I knew how to skin an elk when I was really young, mm-hmm. but I had absolutely, I'm all about health and preserving life. So I had absolutely no desire to use a gun. Right. Or to shoot anything. I catch spiders and I let them go outside, or I let them live, because they get rid of other bugs. But I knew how to do all of those things. But it's also something that my kids have watched me come into, because I can handle a gun really well. Like when we have competitions in the backyard to see who's going to do the dishes, I tend to win those. I don't end up doing the dishes after a big barbecue or anything like that. But I did my concealed carry and I cried the whole time, the whole time. But as a mother bear, a mother lion, a lioness, whatever it is, the individuals that were training me tapped into that. They're like, I know you might not ever want to do this, but what if your children were at risk?
Right.
So I get to model for the kids how to come into this strength, how to be a good person, how to be emotionally fit, be responsible for their emotions so they're not putting it on other people, how to take on gender roles and collapse them, how to stand up when they see somebody is needing support or needing help or is being suppressed and stand up for that. I get to model that in order for them to see how it gets done, because they may not, like Christy said, Jessie didn't cook for a long time, but now she knows how to because Christy modeled that for her. Christy's a really good cook. And so it's a matter of knowing that you can model coming into your strength, model coming into being that person that is true to self, and in that being true to others. And David's really, it's really clear that that's what he's asking for right from the beginning. And it's not easy sometimes. The kids have to flex their muscles and they have to develop into that. But he's all about, okay, what is it going to look like for you to come into who you are within your greatest potential and still be true to yourself, but within your greatest potential. And so he asks that of the kids all the time.
Wonderful.
You know? And continues to as they become adults.
Yeah, amazing.
And what's your spiritual connection? Like David and I come at it a little differently, but what's your spiritual connection? And do you recognize that that comes first? Whether that's God, whether that's, you know, source, whatever it is, can you recognize that that relationship is priority right from the beginning? And then bringing that relationship into your life is how you're going to have guidance to be that amazing person, to be that good person, to be that authentic. Because good is a confusing word. Okay, I'm a non-dualist more than anything anymore. And so good and bad, they both can create these incredibly tough pressures. Whereas if I'm coming back to center all the time and I'm living from center, what is best for me has the ability to be best for everyone else, but that's their responsibility.
Well said.
So what comes from center, and can I come from center? And whoa, stop, bring it back. Where are you at? Are you coming from that grounded, centered place so that you can come out into the world and encourage others to come from that grounded, centered place? So if we teach ourselves to be the lighthouse, then we encourage others to find their own way without running out up and down the shore. You know, what happens when the light is all over the place? All the ships crack up on the rocks because they have no center point. They no longer have that reference point. So we become that centered lighthouse and the whole world can find its way. But we're being sovereign beings in order for that to happen. And that to me is being that best I can be. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well said. Christy, third photo here. This one for you. What is your take on this and what the system is doing with our children?
Oh, so sad. So sad. It's bringing up Phoenix telling me about little kids coming into the gym crying because they don't want to wear a mask. And the parents are trying to encourage it. And the kids know that they don't want to, at least most of them. They probably all used to know. Some of them have probably succumbed to the control factors outside of themselves. And it makes me very angry that they're laughing in the background.
Yeah.
And those children are going along with it. I'm happy to have a child that can say no and stand up to the adults around her and say no.
Well, one of the examples actually to that fact you shared just a few months ago when Phoenix was doing with her gym. She's an incredible gymnast. And she was out on a training run. The gym coach was mandating, which is not a law, right? And it's against your sovereignty, that all of the kids wear a mask to go outside and run. And
no, they were inside running on the floor.
Okay, inside on the floor and running.
And she handed her a mask, and Phoenix shoved it in her shorts.
And said, no, I'm not comply. How old is Phoenix? So everybody can hear.
She's 17.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's we raised for that. One question that came in the last few minutes here before we wrap up, ladies. And hey everybody, it's Brad here. Our show will continue in a moment real quick. If it resonates with you, drop a like, follow us, and subscribe to the show. Hear from cutting edge guests who are experts in their field, have a lot of laughs, and discover some powerful tips on how you can thrive through 2025 in this amazing golden era of humanity. So give us a like, drop a comment, follow us right now as we fight back on the war being waged on humanity right now. And by the way, if you feel so inclined, please do share this with 9 friends, family, and colleagues as well. I'm deeply honored you're listening to this. Thank you for doing so right now. For those many of you who have taken that step. And here we go, back to our show. In terms of parenting, and it is about how is it that you deal with the concept of motivation for kids so that they want to do like a list of chores in the house versus punishment if they do it? How could you weight that differently? What are the things that you would do? And then we've already discussed how you're sculpting, you're helping shape your children in a way, basically allowing them to find their flow is one of my interpretations. But there's also boundaries because you, in my mind, as a parent, you're the authority figure and you're a leader. So how is it that you can set boundaries between you and between them that serve the family unit and also serve the individual? Great question.
Well, we come from two different styles, David and I, but I like to make it fun. One, like everybody, every Saturday morning at a set time, because that was when everybody was home. It was like we blast the music and everybody's working together and then it's all done. Right. But I have a tendency to ask them, or let them know, hey, I am very busy. If you can look for whatever it is that you can do to help, they generally go above and beyond versus just limiting with a list. So a list is quite limiting and it's fairly, here's dictated. Whereas if I'm like, okay, as much as you can do, because I want you to take a look around, I want you to be aware of the environment, I want you to be aware of the energy in our home. And then they tend to go above and beyond. But I always like natural consequences. If I have lists of things, or if I have a few things for the kids to do, which I try to avoid as much as possible, it's super easy. Yes, you can go out with your friends once this is done. They're highly motivated.
Right.
But then I have to be consistent as the leader, right? Somebody once said to me, as a parent, you're the captain of the ship. You don't ask a child that has never had experience to captain a ship, or you're going to crack up on the rocks. So you be the captain, but the captain can't do it all. The captain just helps to bring it together. And then there's going to be individuals that become captain of the ship. You want them to be able to be captain of their own ship. So you're not always telling them what to do. You're asking them to look around and see what needs to be done. So you're asking them to think instead of just dictating, telling all the time. And then the natural or logical, because sometimes there's not a natural consequence. Okay. If their room is messy, a natural consequence is that they live in mess, right? It starts to smell, it starts to do all those things. A logical consequence is what I was saying before, which is, okay, you don't go out until this is done. It's that simple. There's no, you don't have to negotiate anything. And often I ask them, what do you think would be a logical consequence if you don't do this? So I'm getting their buy-in, and they come up with better logical consequences, or natural consequences are just natural, but they come up with better ones than we can normally, because they know what is challenging. And if they try and pull it a little bit, I say, yeah, that's a really great start. Hey, but what's going to happen if this isn't done, or if you haven't done this? And that works quite a bit more when they're younger, right? But as they get older, I'm really looking around at, okay, I see all these things need done, but these aren't important to them. They're important to me. So what can I get them looking around at to see what's important to them? And just giving them more and more space to really understand, okay, well, if this was my home, how would I want it? Right? Because that's what they're doing, is they're learning how to do that for themselves. And natural consequences are they're available. If a kid doesn't eat their food, guess what? They're going to get hungry. Mom doesn't cook 3 meals, for every mealtime. So if they don't eat at mealtime, what's going to happen? They're going to have to get their own food. That's a natural consequence. But I want them to listen to their bodies, so I'm not going to make them eat. What about in the house if they don't clean their room? Oh, well, we can have parameters where they at least have to have the garbage out of their room on a weekly basis. It's really easy. If you don't have the garbage out of your room on a weekly basis, what's going to happen? What's the logical consequence? And they come up with it for themselves. So it's not us being dictators, it's us being captains, right? And they know really well how to come up with logical consequences, especially if you're asking that of them. Because they know that if certain things don't get done, then they're not going to get a ride. Period. Right? So it becomes a two-way, it's a co-creative piece. Instead of the parent doing all the work, it's like, okay, well, if you can't come up with a way to look after this, no, you don't go out until you come up with a way, right? Come to me with a solution, and then we can talk about how we can get you out about and doing all those things that you want to do. Because let's face it, we all get to eat and we all get to clean up. It's not rocket science by any means.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It can be fun too. It doesn't have to be horrible. It doesn't have to, schooling, learning, chores, you can make them fun. And that's about emotional fitness too. I know I need to do this. Am I going to make it miserable? Or am I going to make it like rocking out, having fun, music really loud? 10-second tidy was one of my favorite things that I learned from any TV show as a parent. Okay, how fast can we do this? Let's be speedy, right? So how do we make it fun as much as possible?
Very cool. Very cool. Christy?
Yeah, I remember singing songs while we clean up. And I'm looking back on my parenting and thinking, when they were younger, I would just want to get it done fast and efficiently, like get all the dishes or whatever cleaned up. And looking back on it, it is so beneficial, and especially seeing it with my grandson now, like it's so beneficial because kids naturally want to help, and just having them help and encouraging the help, even if it's not perfect or cleaned exactly as you wanted, they get the joy and the benefit of helping out. And then it creates just like, oh, we did this together. That is such a wonderful thing. And then space. I gave the second bathroom here to Jesse when we moved down here, and she was 15 at the time, and I just tried not to go in it. I was just like, unless we had like a house guest or somebody was coming over, I did not go in there. I did not touch it. I did not clean it. So that is the natural consequence. And then, Phoenix just naturally likes to clean. So then we have to learn balance with that too, right? So we can get Jessie, when she was living here, her included in the keeping the house clean, and everybody does it. Jessie's really good at organizing little details. So then, here you go, organize the junk drawer. It was a task, but there, like Judy said it very well. And there's always a natural consequence for things. And there's making agreements, sure, we can go, the kitchen's still a mess. I'm not ready to go till it's clean. Whatever.
Yeah.
There's, everybody can be creative with what works for their family, and you learn along the way and you get better at it.
Yeah. And my experience with kids as well is they want to impress you, when you allow that to happen, right? When you've got that supportive environment with what you were mentioning, you've got those boundaries as well as their respect that you create for them, that they then return to you right from the get-go at a young age, versus if you're being dictated that you need to respect my word is the rule of law, more kids want to rebel from that. In my experience, we've all been kids, right? All three of us here, right? So I can speak from personal experience.
Some of us still are a little bit.
Oh, heck, I still identify as 18. Let me just tell you.
So I have two things, Brad, that I did, and I just remembered them. Okay, so we had all Saturday mornings, we had all the chores on sticky notes. All of them were in sticky notes, and they were in a jar. And there was two different colors. There was one that was like pretty easy stuff, and then there was a color that was a little bit more detailed, more complicated, or whatever. And so the youngers always chose from the little easier until they wanted to. They wanted to grow up. They wanted to be bigger and choose those ones. And so instead of giving everybody a list of things, we would work from that jar until all of the sticky notes had been opened, and we just kept them over here, and then we put them back in the jar for the next week. And it worked so beautifully because everything got done. But it was like, who knows what you would get that week? It was like, okay. And then there was another thing we used, and that was a box that if things were left in common rooms, things went in the box and you didn't get them for a week.
I remember that box.
And if you wanted it back really bad, you had to do 2 or 3 things. Like you had to earn it back. And it's just how it went. And so we kept our common spaces more orderly. It was never completely orderly because there was too many of us, but their bedrooms were theirs. That needed to be their space for them to learn how to do it. But those two things made a huge difference in how we did Saturday mornings and made it more fun. And the kids would often try and start early so that they could like kind of cherry pick. They would put little like dog ears on some of the sticky notes and stuff like that so that they could start cherry picking some of the things that they wanted to do.
That's cool.
So we made it fun as much as possible. And we again, opened it up for them to look around and go, okay, what needs to be done as they got older? And they would just figure it out.
Cool tips. Thanks for sharing. Let's jump into your websites, ladies, as we're just wrapping up this show here. There's so much to continue to cover. So I'd love to have you back on, maybe do every other month or every quarter, because there's so much that you have to share. Like we could do like 1,000 shows, really. And when I met you, Judy, it was second or third meeting. I'm like, you need to write a book on being a parent. And then, you introduced me to Christy. And I'm like, the two of you need to do a TV series and books on parenting kids. Really remarkable. So the Reiki Muse right here is Christy's website. You can go to thereikimuse.com. Links will be in the description as well. And this is where you can get your distant healing. You can have Reiki and reflexology sessions with Christy at her practice in Boulder, shop some amazing things. And when you sign up and you join Christy's list, she sends out monthly Reiki full moon meditations to everybody on our list. So just amazing as well that we can go here. Anything you'd like to share about the website, Christy, before we close it out and go to Judy's?
Yeah, I'm happy to do distant healing. That's mostly what I do right now. And yeah, I'd love to connect with you. I also give you, when you sign up for the email list, you get a 10% off your first distance session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And thank you.
Awesome. You got it. And Judy, with the True Health Detective, share with us a little bit more about the website here and what everybody can receive from you, whether it's scheduling an appointment or on your newsletter.
Well, the very first thing I like to do is connect with people one-on-one. So you can always schedule a complimentary session, like not a full session, but a complimentary call so we can get to know one another. It's one of those things that I believe is really important. It's for you to get to know me a little and for me to get to know you, to make sure that you're someone that I can support and help. And then you'll watch over time, if you're paying attention to my site and my work, is that I have online program that I'm starting to offer now via donation. So you can access all the information that I share about getting rid of chronic illness or coming back to nature and coming back to yourself, getting rid of all the accumulation that causes all that illness. It's something I think is really important because it's not just my information. It belongs to everyone. If you want my personal time, we can talk about that and we can get you set up with the direction you want to go. I work with individuals that have been dealing with chronic illness for 50, 60 years, and I deal with individuals that are just looking to prevent, some of the nasty pieces. We're very holistic, my team and I, and we're all about making sure that you have as much support as possible to work through whatever journey you're working through. I love to work with moms because I feel like they are pivotal as far as communities. They get themselves healthy, they bring their kiddos into greater health, and that just completely expands out into the community and the world. So I'm here if you're looking for that. And it's been such a pleasure, Brad, to hang with you and Christy. I always like it when we get together. But yeah, it's available, and you can always email me through the site if you have questions.
Awesome. So you can schedule free appointments, get a free newsletter at the reikimuse.com, appointment for free with Judy at truehealthdetective.com. Ladies, thank you for being divine stewardesses of humanity and sharing these experiences with everybody. It's just an incredible benefit. And it's always a pleasure connecting with both of you, and look forward to time allowing all of our schedules where we actually meet again live and in person as a hug, but virtual hugs all around moving forward. Thank you all as well for tuning in to the Sovereign Soul program. Please like, subscribe, and share this with 9 friends, family, and loved ones, because this is a way that we grow our community exponentially worldwide by sharing information like this to take us back to the ancient, amazing modalities and technologies that we've had that propel us forward in this new quantum world in the age of Aquarius. I'm your host, Brad Wozni. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you like anything that we share in the show, please let us know in the comments, drop a like there as well. And you've got all the information to connect with these wonderful divine line mamas, divine mama bears, and continue to move forward in your journey. Thank you as well for tuning in. All the best. Have yourself a wonderful day, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Please like, follow, subscribe, share this with 9 friends and family. And of course, if you enjoy our blinged Buddha firing red pills from his 9mm, let us know.